Stream is live. You get over to YouTube to Instagram. We're hot on IG. Live right now with Miguel Quiles. Facebook group. And the last one on Facebook.
Yep. Looks like Facebook is live and YouTube is live. Booyah.
Cool. We are hot. What's going on, everybody? I hope everybody is doing well. I see we got people coming in already. So I'll let everybody come in. But, today, as you know, we're live with the infamous Miguel Quiles, who's joining us today to talk about all things Miguel and, talking about his class coming up at the Boca Photo Summit this August. So if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, I don't understand what the problem is. Go sign up, and we do have a special code for you today for Miguel. So if you want to sign up for the show, you can use code Miguel, and that will get you $100 off of your registration. But again, we're going to take a couple of minutes to let everybody just kind of, come in and admire Miguel's setup back there with the 50 million cameras back there. Like,
There's a few. There's a few.
Some people have an Amazon problem. This dude has a camera.
Yeah. Hey, this was supposed to be just 7 cameras, like 7 specific models that I remember growing up that either I had or like some friends or family members had. And man, it's a bug. It's definitely a bug that bit me. And now I got too many and too many more on the way.
Too many more on the way. Dang. So how many total? Do you know how many you have?
There's probably a couple right around 200.
200 cameras.
Yeah. There's a few, but a lot of them I picked up at like thrift stores. I mean, I would say the vast majority I picked up at thrift stores. There was a couple of them that were kind of rare. That when I found out about them, I was like, oh shoot, if I can get my hands on that would be dope. And so I bought them on eBay. Had to like get them from Japan and from Austria and from other countries. So yeah, there was a few that I bought on eBay that I paid too much for, and then the majority of them $5, $10, $20. Most of them are working. So it's part of the content strategy going into the latter part of this year.
Got it. Okay. I see Kay is asking how many of them are Sony.
Well, I guess technically the answer would be all of them. So from this shelf over, it's Minolta, which Minolta was purchased by Sony. So they're technically, it's like Mortal Kombat, like Shang Tsung when he picks you up and he steals your soul. Like they are now Sony. From this shelf over, that's all Sony stuff, and it's starting all the way from like I think 1988 or 89 is like the oldest Sony camera that's up there. Believe it or not, they've been making digital cameras since the 80s, which is crazy.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Omar says Miguel is building a camera museum. That indeed he is. Friend.
That's the goal.
Him and my father. My father has a ton of cameras, ton of camera gear, right? Takes no photos at all. So yeah, but he's always been into photography, right?
It's messed up. You got to get out there, to get these things is one thing, but to go out there and use them, man, that's the next level, and they're beautiful cameras too. Like I've been getting into shooting film again, and just finding some of these old film cameras. Like, try to see if I find this one. This one was one, and I got a couple of these that are like this. Gold camera. You know what I mean? This is
It's
a
like,
16 millimeter
man,
and just beautiful camera, you know. And this, I mean, these are old, but you imagine, you know, it's one thing like nowadays to go outside and take pictures with this. Imagine like back in its time, you know, going out and taking pictures with a camera like this, gold. It's got a light meter and everything on it. Like
right.
it's beautiful, man. Just to be able to go out there and buy these things and one day get out and do some photo shoots with it. Like it's fun, man. Just makes photography fun.
That looks like a harmonica.
It
It's so
does. I know
small.
it does. It looks very much like a harmonica, but it's got a little tiny viewfinder. Could barely see anything. But hey, people went out there. This was the like a spy camera back in the day, you know. So you imagine
Oh
you
wow.
slip that in your pocket, you go out. It's pretty awesome.
So I see that we got a lot more people jumping in. You know, some people in here. I see some people live on my Instagram. So if everybody can just kind of chime in and just let us know where you're joining us from today, and we're gonna go ahead and dive in. So, you know, again, Miguel, I want to thank you for coming on and spending some time with us today. I know you're extremely busy, and I appreciate you joining us for the Boca Photo Summit coming up here in August. Now, for everyone, I first came across Miguel on YouTube, which is probably how many of you found him as well. And then later on, you know, ran into him, like we got acquainted through speaking at conferences and things of that nature. So prior to everything that you have going on YouTube, kind of tell us like what was everything Miguel Quiles in terms of photography prior to blowing up on YouTube.
Yeah, you know, so first and foremost, thank you for having me and thank you to everybody who's here in the chat. You know, prior to getting into this wacky world of YouTube, you know, I was a local guy just trying to figure out photography. You know, I was trying to figure out my way in the world, trying to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up, even though I started in my like late 20s, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do in this industry. And so prior to YouTube, I was shooting everything. I mean, I was literally photographing, you know, pets, maternity, um, baby shoots, weddings. I've shot video for weddings, any and everything. I did apparel, clothing shoots, branding shoots, anything where somebody had money. I had a camera. Let's ride. Like we were making it happen. And of course, prior to that, then I was working in corporate America, and that was a whole different thing. But yeah, that was it. And you know, through that, it kind of led me into this area of creating content. And I didn't know at the time what that was going to look like, but I saw a gap at the time on YouTube, which was that, for example, I was a consumer of the content as well because I'm a photographer, I'm getting started. There were certain things that I wanted to see that wasn't on YouTube at the time. Uh, Legitimate tutorials, right? Like that wasn't so much of a thing. A lot of it was there, but you had to pay for it.
Mhm.
And so I just kind of took this approach that, you know, if I could go on YouTube and I could teach what I know and teach what I learn, I will always be able to go back and just learn new skills and just continue to just build off of that. And that's kind of how things ended up going into the YouTube sphere. It was it was great. It's changed my life. I've had awesome opportunities that have come, you know, exclusively because of the fact that I'm a content creator on YouTube.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. Like we had a long, lengthy conversation about like the whole process a few months back, right? Which started out as like a quick 20 minute, turned into like 2.5, 3 hours, guys. Like, but
Yeah.
we had an opportunity to like really sit down and rap because you know, Miguel, like myself, and I'm sure all of you, he is, you know, we'll say found the cheat code to like make it happen on YouTube. But what I think people don't understand is that it obviously doesn't happen overnight, right? So even somebody like me who I have a massive email list of photographers from speaking at different conferences, I've been doing workshops since I think either 2017 or 2018, my own. And then I started speaking at conferences in 2019, right? But even with that, I go to a conference, I can't get 5 feet without, everybody being all over the place. But my following on YouTube is minuscule compared to all of that. So, um,
You know
without
what's
giving
funny about that?
away, huh?
You know what's funny about that? That perspective of in your fishbowl, you could be the big fish, and then all of a sudden you get on YouTube, and it's like, it's like you're a drip. Like it takes me back when before I was a photographer, I was a huge gamer, right? I wish esports was a thing when I was growing up, because I don't know, maybe I would be a professional esports player. But I used to play Street Fighter 2 competitively in Orlando, and like that was my game. I was rocking people left and right in the arcades, taking people's money, like trash talking like everybody while I destroyed them in these games. And then there was an online service that came out called Xband, and I signed up for Xband, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? It's a nationwide. It was one of the earliest online gaming platforms, and I'm thinking to myself, listen, I'm a beast here in Orlando. I'm gonna get on this Xband network, and I'm gonna show how much of a beast I am playing people like across the nation. And wouldn't you know, I would get crushed by like just about everybody playing on this like national stage, So it's so funny. Like you could be a big fish, in your area, but all of a sudden you start expanding beyond that. And it's like, oh man, I'm like not even a bug. You know what I mean? I'm like less than a bug. So yeah, it's the nature of life, man.
Yeah, man. And it's like it's the like the I don't know what's the Da Vinci Code right now, right?
Yep.
So everything I've seen the transition of YouTube. I mean, many of us have, right? But prior to photography, I came from a different world. I came from the music industry, and I have a buddy who literally built his massive media company off of doing interviews on YouTube. So I literally
Oh
saw this
wow.
dude go from so Vlad from Vlad TV
Yeah, yeah,
that we've
yeah.
been for like many years, right? So I remember when like it was a conversation between Vlad and I. Oh, I'm going to do this thing, right? And
Yep.
then, next thing you know, it's like, hey man, I'm doing XYZ in New York. Like, come out. You know what I'm saying? And like now it's this
It's
massive
huge.
thing. Right.
Bro,
So
YouTube is like a kingmaker. It can change your life.
100%, man. Like when I see what this dude is doing now, in that world, but then like I see people like you, nearly 300,000 followers, bro. Like
Yeah.
300,000 followers. When did you start that journey of I'm gonna be a content creator on YouTube?
I mean, I feel like I had like several starting points. It's like many things in life. Like you start something, you have an idea, and then maybe you're not equipped for it at the time. And so you kind of table it for a little while and then you pick it up again later. Um, I had a friend of mine who I grew up with who actually met playing video games on that network that I was talking about earlier, who was one of the very first YouTubers to get monetized on YouTube. He was part of like the early YouTube creator program. And I remember having a conversation with him, and he was, super open. And he was like, dude, I'm making like $15,000 a month on YouTube. And we're talking like in the technically mid to late 2000s. And 15 grand back in 2007, 2008 was like serious money, for somebody who's like in their mid 20s. And I was just like, oh, that's crazy, And I kind of just put that in the back of my mind. And at the time, I was making like silly YouTube videos and skits and things of that nature. But really, it was 2012 when I just decided that, I wanted to be a photographer. I noticed there was a space in the YouTube market where, there was a lot of good photographers, but they weren't teaching what they do. It was more of like a platform for people to just show off, like, hey, I took this really cool picture. And it was almost like they would drop little nuggets of how they did what they did. but they wouldn't tell you just straight out like, all right, here's what I got. I got this lens here. I got this camera body. Here are the settings. Here's why I got the lights the way I got them. And you didn't see that at the time on YouTube. And so that's kind of what motivated me to kind of get on the platform. I also knew that because of the experience that my friend had on YouTube, that it was possible for me to get on the platform and build an audience, and hopefully in the long haul, divert and bring attention to my photography and to my work. And I didn't know it was going to become all this, but it's pretty cool that it did. And I'm excited to see in the next year to 2 years, like how much different it's going to be moving forward then. So that's kind of the journey that I've had. And that's the journey that I'm inviting people to be a part of, coming to this bokeh summit that we got coming up.
Yeah. I mean, and I want to dive into, some of the nuggets, because again, if y'all want it all, y'all got to come to the conference. You can't just give it all away, right?
It's too much. There's too much stuff. You know what I mean?
Right. Because even in our conversation, which was again about 2.5 hours, now granted, we weren't talking about that the entire time, but just in that, it was a lot of great insight. And before I even push on, one of the things that like really stood out to me, and I said this to somebody else the other day, because you said it to me, and it just gave so much perspective to me, but it also gave a lot of perspective to the person that I told. We were talking and I was like, hey, I got this massive email list, right? But I only got about 800 followers on or subscribers on YouTube. And you were like, think about it like this. If you were speaking anywhere else and you had a room where 800 people showed up, like, would it be a thing? And I was like, perspective is everything. Because if I was standing on the stage and it was 800 people, like, that would be a massive room. That would be a massive room, right?
And you might be a little bit nervous, seeing a lot of eyeballs and a lot of people. Like, it's a whole different game. When you got 100 people, it's a different game, let alone 800 people. Like, come on now.
Right.
A lot of people.
Even with that, like I have videos that have like 11,000 views or whatever, right? And I don't even know how I don't even know how I got that. And then I have videos that have like 70 views. So can you talk about that a little bit, about that about the contrast in how some videos perform, some videos don't perform, and like does that affect you mentally while you're creating the next video, or then how do you pivot from that?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely affects you at all points. I think what a lot of people don't understand is how much goes into creating a YouTube video. You see the final product that gets posted up, and maybe it's a 5 or 6 minute video. That 5 or 6 minute video, for each minute of that video, it could be between 2 to 8 hours worth of work on the front end and the back end of creating that. And so, so yeah, I mean, it bothers you in a sense. It's kind of like, you have a child, and then you're hoping like people see your child and they're like, oh, you got a beautiful kid. And instead that, you walk in the room and they look at your kid and they're just like, oh, so what's up? Like it's like a little bit heartbreaking, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it's all about perspective. And so the way I look at it is, if I create a piece of content, the heart of what I try to do is to make content that will help someone in some way, give them just something that they could take away, whether it be a piece of information, a piece of inspiration, a piece of education, that they can go out and they can do something that they weren't doing before they watched my video. And so, that's been it for me. And of course, some videos, they do that very well. And then other videos I think are going to do really well don't do as well. Other videos that I don't think are going to do great, they blow up. I have a YouTube video on my channel that I did it probably like one afternoon. Like, I scripted what I wanted to say because I wanted to make sure I didn't fumble over my words, and recorded it in my dining room, went upstairs, edited the video, posted it up on YouTube, went out to go get groceries. And from the time that I left my house to the time that I got back in the car to drive back, I was like, oh, let me check my YouTube dashboard to see how many views I had. And I was at like 60 or 70,000 views, which is madness. Like YouTube doesn't do that. Madness. And my channel was way small at the time. And I'm like, what in the heck is going on? And I started looking at the comments, and the comments were like, oh, my left ear loved this. And, you know, it was weird, like weird comments about like something about the left ear. And so I got home and I was like, let me, what are people talking about? So I put my headphones on and I connected it to my phone. Cause back then, you know, you could plug your headphones into a phone, and audio was only coming out of one side.
Oh,
and I was
snap.
like, you gotta be kidding me. Like this video is blowing up and it only has one channel of audio. And I was like, oh, this is crazy. So, you know, I couldn't take it down at that point. I've never had a video that blew up like that and went viral. And it's almost at like, I think 1.7, 1.8 million views now. And so, you know, it's one of those things where like you put out content that hopefully will help somebody, you know, and in this case, that video helped out a lot of people. And that's why, you know, the video went viral, but you learn from those things. And then you come back to the drawing board and then you start creating more content. And hopefully the goal of that new content that you make is that it helps even more people. And so that's kind of been the name of the game for me. You know, it's definitely discouraging at times when your videos don't pop off, but you know, the truth of the matter is that just because you have a big subscriber base, it doesn't mean that your videos are going to pull a bunch of views. You might get a subscriber who comes to one of your videos that maybe they saw your wedding stuff behind the scenes and they're like, oh, this is what I want, I'm going to subscribe. And then you make another video about how you edit wedding photos and people are like, oh, I don't want to see that, you know, or maybe they're just there because they like you, you know, and if you could be a personality based channel, that's great. But that's how it goes. You know, that's just the way that YouTube goes. And, you know, for me, I know that I'm in it for the long haul. So whether or not a video does well today or not, doesn't really matter. I just keep coming up with new ideas. And the cool thing is with what we do, we talk to a lot of people when we go out to trade shows, when we teach. I was just in Little Rock, Arkansas, doing a keynote presentation and had great conversations with photographers there. And I got like 5 or 6 video ideas just from talking to people. And I'm like, you know what, when I get home, I'm making these videos. So sure enough, when we're done rolling the camera today, I got a model and a videographer coming and we're shooting content like right after I get off camera. So
nice.
It's the way it's got to be.
So how often, I'm assuming you post weekly?
No, believe it or not.
No.
I used to post weekly. And then, you know, it got to the point to where I started to realize that like, if I post weekly, I'm not posting the kind of stuff that I would want to. I'm just posting just to check a box and say, yeah, you know, I posted a video this week. You know, nowadays I post videos when I have something of value to post, you know, and that could be once every 2 weeks, could be once a month, could be once every 2 months, you know. So it just kind of depends on a variety of different things. When do I have something of value to bring to the table? Some of it is business, you know. When does a sponsor come through and say, hey, you know, we would like to sponsor one of your videos? And then you look at I have a list of like 500 different videos that I want to make. And so, you know, if a sponsor comes through and they say, hey, we want to support your channel, we want to support your community, I go through the channel list or to the list of topics and I say, okay, this video topic based on what their product is, I can make this video. And then they support me in my efforts of making content because, like I say, the reality is making content ain't free. It ain't cheap.
Free.
I got a videographer and a model coming today that they are not cheap and they are not free. And so, you know, the studio that I'm in is not cheap and not free. So as much as I would like to be able to, you know, be that generous guy who just makes content, you know, for free, it is still free for the people watching because they're not paying for it. But, you know, it's supported by sponsors and I'm thankful for that.
So how much of your overall business now is content creation versus I'm shooting for clients?
Yeah, it's a great question. Over the last few years with the onset of the pandemic, that pie just shifted tremendously. Prior to that, I would say the majority of what I did was working with clients, especially because I was in New Jersey, close to New York. So I had a lot of commercial work that was coming through from there. Um, right at the beginning of the pandemic, I moved from New Jersey to Orlando, Florida. And I'm talking like literally the day that the NBA and like all the leagues were closing because of COVID, that was the
Mm-hmm.
day that I was closing on my house in New Jersey.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I was already like on my way down with my, 3 dogs down to Orlando, Florida in a car. Um, and so at that time, I didn't know COVID was going to be like a thing. And I get here and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I got a few places that I'm thinking about renting a studio. I'd already done the legwork. I had a few clients in play. Of course, you get to Orlando. Nobody wanted to show properties because of COVID. All that busy work that I did to set up appointments and line up business before getting to Orlando, all that came to a screeching halt because of the pandemic. And so,
Wow.
there was a time there where I was like, man, like, what's the next phase going to be? Because right now, portrait photography doesn't look like it's going to survive. And in comes content creation, and where the one thing fell off, it fell off a cliff because of COVID. Um, Companies and brands were like, hey, we want to be able to continue to get our work out there and our name out there. And you have a platform, and if it's a product and a service that you believe in, let's talk. And so content creation saved my life. It saved my business. It saved my well-being. And because of that, I've shifted quite a bit of the things that I teach from just being just photography related to now, like, hey, you need to start weaving in this content creation side of things, because that's just the way that things are going to be moving forward. Like, if you don't jump in the pool and start to build your brand online, you will be left behind, you will be forgotten. And at some point, if you really love photography, chances are you might have to do something else, because God forbid the next pandemic comes, so
Right.
you have to future proof yourself. And for me, having that social media, that YouTube channel, man, that was that brought life, so these days, it's awesome because I'm in a position to where I could take as much commercial work as I want. And if the client that comes through that says, hey, we want to work with you, if they're difficult, if what they're asking for is unreasonable, if their budget doesn't make sense, I'm not doing it. Like, I don't have to do it. Right.
Right.
And I feel like it's a beautiful place to be in, where I work when I want to, and I work with who I want to. And I'm not beholden to like, oh man, I got to take this job because, my cell phone bill is due next week and my car bill is due, and I'm just going to have to eat crap, and take on this client. No, I mean, you can go in there and you can work with the people that you want to work with, the people that actually love you for who you are and love your work. So yeah, I mean, it's great these days. I get to pick and choose the people I work with. And I think on the backside of that, the people that I do choose to work with are much, they have more of a sense of pride, because they know, like, hey, working with Miguel, he doesn't work with everybody. And, content creation allowed me to be able to do that.
Yeah, man, I think there's a couple interesting points there. Like, I tell photographers all the time, I meet people, they work, they have jobs and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, I want to go full time, quit my job. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Why are you going to do that for?
Right. Like, why are you going to quit? One, I've been working for anybody since I was 19. I
Man,
worked in the music industry for years, right? I
that's a beautiful
started.
thing.
Yeah, it is, but it isn't, because when
Yeah.
things like when 2008 happens, and like when COVID happened, right? Like, those were like big shifts for me without having that quote unquote sense of security. one of the biggest things that I felt like uh, gave me peace in the early years of photography was that I didn't need the income from photography when I started, right? So if I'm
Right.
meeting with a client and they say, "Oh, your price is too high," if you're in a situation where you're like, "Man, I need this money so I can like feed myself, feed my family,"
Yep.
right? Then you have to be negotiable. But to be able to walk away from a situation or be willing to walk away to say, "Hey, well, that's not my rate. I'm good." In a lot of those situations, people are like, well, yeah, I'm just not willing to pay it or I can't afford it. But then in some of those situations, you have people that come back because they want that negotiation game. I don't I don't do that. I tell people all the time, I don't negotiate with terrorists. And you guys are
Yeah.
not gonna y'all are not gonna terrorize me to lower my rate so that you can go get an extra pair of Louboutins or buy a
Yep.
third dress for the wedding, right? Um, so COVID is like when the brand partnership part of it just kind of really took off for you. At
Yep.
right before that happened, what was your subscriber count around that time versus now?
Yeah. So, well, right when the pandemic began, I would say I was probably at, ooh, maybe 50,000,
Damn.
maybe. But keep in mind, before I was making content full time on my YouTube channel, I was on
Mhm.
Adorama TV and I was creating content on their platform.
So
So,
that
when I left Adorama TV, I was probably at like, this was mid 2018,
mhm.
and I was probably at like 5 or 6 thousand subscribers. So
Okay.
from 2018, mid 2018 to like the beginning of the pandemic, I went from, mid 6 thousands to like right around 50K. And I think it was 2021 that I hit 100K. So like it's a weird thing where like with YouTube, it starts off very slow and then all of a sudden the growth is exponential. And so and then after I hit 100K, I hit 200K in like a few months. You know what I mean? So it's like, YouTube is a weird thing. But, I will say that it was also a weird thing that when I had a smaller audience, I was pulling more views back then on photography related content. So it's a weird balance, man. It's like people think, oh, you have a big YouTube channel. So that's, your views, you get so many more views because of that. But I actually had pulled some pretty good views, 15, 20, 30,000. The million view video, my channel wasn't even, I think I was at like 30K, you know? So, um,
Mm,
yeah, so it's funny how YouTube works in that, the growth is exponential over a period of time, but a lot of it just came from the fact that like I was making content. I was doing weekly content for the most part during that time.
mhm,
We were creating photography tutorials that I didn't really see other people creating in that way on the platform.
mhm.
Um, outside of like sponsorships and things like that, which we didn't, I had a few sponsors back then, but a lot of the content that I was making was just content that I just made on my channel. Like it was viewer supported, and so I was just making money off of ad revenue. And now, there's so many different avenues to be able to make money on YouTube that it's crazy. So yeah, that's kind of how it worked out with the growth.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a second because you know everybody wants the YouTube for the brand partnership deals. I tell people all the time, I am in the weirdest conundrum, right? I have the relationships with the companies, right? I had them
Yeah.
prior to YouTube. So I initially started my channel January of 20. I recorded like 10 videos. I uploaded two. Pandemic happened. I didn't do anything else with any other
Ooh,
content until
it's the
like
best time to have gotten on it too.
right until like last year, roughly around like September, October, or something like that, is when I really started to like create content for real, for real. But I have relationships with the companies. I'm at all of the conferences and stuff like that. Whereas a lot of people who started out on YouTube, they had to build the audience to get the relationships with the company. So I'm going backwards, right?
Right.
Um,
It's called
and
having an advantage right there.
you would think in some cases, yes. So, like for instance, I got a message before we got on today. It was like, "Hey, I want you to do this video, whatever, whatever." I'm like, I was already doing that video. Like, I'm in the middle of doing that video right now. Sure,
Right.
we can do like a partnership, right?
Oh,
I've also had situations where people who were like, they'll want to pay me one thing conference wise, right? Because they're like, oh, you have this level of influence, right? And then when it comes to like content creation, they say, oh, well, your audience isn't that big. And I'm like, I'm still the same person. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
don't try to play me. So like, how
Yeah.
do you handle situations like that?
Um, what, as far as being minimized, having things minimized?
Well, more so just the whole negotiation of the scope of the content.
Yeah. You know, it's a funny thing. Like before I fell in love with photography, I fell in love with sales. And so to me, negotiating is a lot of fun. I will tell you this before I answer the question, and hopefully I don't lose it. But prior to becoming a photographer, I actually was going to start a completely separate business that trained people on how to win when it comes to job interviews. And so, like, I'm highly competitive. And I actually, as part of this business, I would go out and apply for jobs just so that I could go get an interview, that I wasn't going to take the job, just so that I could have the experience. And many of the times, like, I would record the conversations. Of course, they knew, you know, that it was being recorded. I would record the conversations so that I could hear back, like, what did I say when they asked me this? And, you know, it's very funny because it's very common, I think, for, you know, for businesses, brands, companies, whatever the case might be, they want to get the maximum amount of exposure, the maximum amount of sales for the least amount of money possible every time. Like, and if you go into it understanding that, that's all good and fine. For me, as an individual, as a photographer, as a content creator, I want to make as much as humanly possible from every possible collaboration, from every bit of work that I do, right? And so, knowing that, like, every situation that I go into, I expect for, at some point during the negotiation, for them to minimize my reach, for them to minimize the scope of what I do. But the funny thing is that the fact that they're even talking to me means that they have value for me, right?
Right.
There's some kind of value there. And so if we weren't having the conversation, then they, you know, they wouldn't have value. If I'm the one that reached out to them and I got to sell, you know, myself on my abilities and what I do, it's a whole different story. But
Right.
yeah, it's a funny thing. I think that photographers are very nervous and scared of the idea of negotiating. They think sale is like a 4-letter word that's a bad word. And honestly, it's one of the most important things that, as a creative, as an individual, you know, if you want to succeed in life, you better fall in love with selling. You better fall in love with the process. And you almost have to be like in the Matrix. Like, you got to be Neo. Like, you got to see through all the mess, you know what I mean, of what's going on, and see it for what it is. And when you could separate yourself emotionally from the business that's at hand, I think at that point you have a better opportunity to win at whatever it is that you're, you know, trying to negotiate. When you're tied to it, and, you know, I kind of talked about this earlier, like, if you got bills to pay and all of a sudden a job comes through and they want to pay you X amount of dollars, but it's less than what you should be paid, you know, that's that drives you to do stuff that you don't want to do. But if you could separate yourself and say, you know what, just because you know, it's money being offered to me, it doesn't mean I got to take it right now. Like something else will come through. The right job, the right opportunity will be there for me. And you know what? It turns out that way most times. So I don't know if that directly answers the question or not, but that's my soapbox.
So like I'm sure what most people want to know, because I mean we're all in it, we're all starting at different places. Like I see people here that are on that I know are like newer just in photography in general and as well as content creation. I myself, I'm a little bit more cemented in photography, right? With brands and I'm familiar with the content creation, so I have a little bit of, wiggle room there where most people don't, right? What were brand deals like when you were starting out versus like if you're comfortable with sharing this
Oh yeah,
information, right?
I'm open
But
book.
what were brand deals like starting out versus what they are now?
So brand deals when I was starting out were surprisingly good. Part of the reason for that was that I always approached this whole YouTube thing as a business from like the earliest possible days. I understand the value of the platform. I understand the value of endorsements. And so I made great money. Like I would talk to content creators that were, you know, in roughly the same size as what I had at the time. And a lot of them were doing collaborations and stuff with companies for like $100, $200. And meanwhile, I was doing multiple $1,000 collaborations and I didn't have a big audience. But again, my videos were pulling a lot of views and that's really what mattered. And so, I had a lot of companies that try to do exactly what we've been talking about, where they're like, oh, but Miguel, you only have 10,000 subscribers and, your channel's small and, the CPM and all the other jargon that we'll talk about in the YouTube class, comes into play. And it's like, yeah, but none of that matters, man. There's an intrinsic value in having me specifically talk about your product to my audience. And whether or not I love the product or not, that's a whole separate thing, right? If I don't love the product, I ain't talking about it. I don't care how much money you send me. That ain't happening. And I got products here at my studio. I got products at home that people have sent me, companies have sent me, and I don't like it. So I ain't making no videos about it. But, if I love the product, that's one thing. For me to talk about that and take time out of, if I'm making a tutorial about my studio photography setup, right? For me to take time out of the nitty gritty of teaching that, how I took those photos, for me to talk about a light stand for 2 minutes or to talk about a light and the features and the specs and all the stuff that salespeople do when you buy a product, you got to pay for that. Like, I'm not going to go into all of that unless it's being, it's being compensated, because that's time that I'm taking out of my day to talk about something that's a benefit financially for another company. Like, they would have paid back in the day thousands of dollars to be in a magazine, right? To be in the back page of a magazine with a little picture, not even having somebody, a human being, saying like, hey, I co-signed this product. It is really good. You should try it too. They're spending thousands on that. Think about how much your sponsors are paying to have a booth. You know what I'm saying? To reach the hundreds of people that are going to be at Bokeh Academy. You know what I mean? Like, to be at the summit, they're going to reach a group of people. My videos are going to reach a group of people too. So it's like, you have to understand whether you're starting out or whether you are wanting to get into it or you've been doing it for a while. You have intrinsic value in what you do. And it's not even just for content, it's as a photographer, right? When people hire you and people are like, oh, my competition's charging this much, so, I can't charge that much. What you're saying is you as an individual are not worth as much as this other person. And I don't believe that. Like, you're worth as much, if not more. You have your own intrinsic value that you bring to the table. And that's why people want to work with you. That's why they hire you. That's why they're going to spend money with you. And so I think as long as you keep your eye on that, you won't get played. And there's a lot of companies out there that they will want to play you. But that's the way to overcome that.
For sure. Let's dive into some of the questions here. Let's get Jamal out of the way first. Jamal said, who is your pick for a Street Fighter character?
Ooh, so early on, definitely Ken was my favorite. I'm a Shoto player. When Akuma finally came out, Akuma was like one of my favorite characters of all time. But um, my two favorite characters outside of that was Zangief and E Honda. And I had a nasty Zangief, really nasty Zangief. I got a video on my YouTube channel talking about this, but I basically stole all the techniques of this like top Street Fighter player with Zangief, and you know he was nasty. He was really good. So still play to this day. So if anybody wants to come get it, come to the photo summit. I'll bring my controllers, and we could do this. Okay, 'cause that's how it goes.
Oh snap, that would be super funny, man. Yeah, we got a
Heck
lot of
yeah.
great stuff that we're doing. Like it's Atlanta, so shout out to Gary Hughes. Every conference we get together, we have a little private karaoke. But for Atlanta, for Boca Summit, we're actually doing trap karaoke on the second night. So trap
Oh
karaoke,
man.
it's Atlanta, so
Of course.
it's got to be trap karaoke, right?
Yeah,
So
of course.
hopefully we'll have Gary there to come out and come host with us. And shout out to Ab. Ab is inside of the Instagram chat. Ab is another great creator who is on YouTube, and as well as he does the stuff for Adorama TV as well. But really quick, if you guys aren't already, be sure to go on over to YouTube and subscribe to Miguel's page. He's almost at 300,000 followers. We're just going to call it 300,000, but let's go ahead and do what we can to get him to 400,000 so he can get some more brand deals out there, right?
Hey, I appreciate that. And listen, Ab is a beast. Subscribe to Ab's channel as well.
Yeah.
He's doing his Adorama TV thing, but he's also got his own YouTube channel. He and I have had conversations over the past few years, and I'm excited to see that he's on the path of starting his YouTube channel. And dude's a beast at photography. He's a beast at teaching this thing. So definitely show the man some love and some support on his channel.
Yeah, he just launched not that long ago. So yeah, definitely get out there and then show him some love as well.
Definitely.
Uh, let's see. Sheena said, "How do you decide on your photography niche?" There
Yeah.
we go.
Like I said in the beginning, like I photographed anything and everything starting out. And so I learned early on that I could parlay my skills as just an individual a lot better going into portrait photography or any kind of photography where I was dealing with people. So it started off with engagements, with weddings, um, eventually shifted to headshots and portraits, and then going into like the commercial route of that. And so it's one of those things where like you have to do what you love. Being that I was such a student of the game when it came to sales, I like people and I like working with them. And since we're here amongst friends, like I love the feeling when you do a photo shoot with somebody and you deliver the photos, and then like the same day, maybe you're friends with them on social media or whatever, and then they change their profile picture to the shot that you did of them. Like that's like what I hunt, like Ash Ketchum would hunt, for different rare Pokemon. Like my rare Pokemon was like you changing your profile picture to a picture that I took. Like that was like it for me. And so that's how I learned to find my niche. And I think for most people, you just have to find what you like to do. If you don't like people, don't mess around with shooting portraits and weddings unless you can somehow learn to love people. Maybe it's shooting products, maybe it's doing some kind of travel, landscape, things like that, or video. But you got to find what you love to do. And in the beginning, you might have to shoot a lot of things to figure out what that is.
Cool. Let's see. Maurice is asking, did you see more platform reach on YouTube prior to partnerships with people like Adorama and Sony?
I don't know that I saw more. It was probably about the same, to be honest. I think that a lot of people on the outside, especially, they overvalue what a partnership would be like with a brand or with a retailer. they think to themselves like, hey, if I could get sponsored by Adorama TV or by Adorama, that would make my career, you know, and I could just retire off of that. And the reality is that I was running my YouTube channel concurrently with the content that I was putting out on Adorama, and my YouTube channel saw like little to no growth from that. Like it was only when I decided like, okay, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to put this content out there and I'm going to keep reiterating what this content looks like until I finally started to gain some steam. But I don't know. I mean, there's probably a small percentage of people that see value in like, oh, he works with Sony or he works with this person or that person. But from a audience perspective, I don't think that that's why they show up. I mean, if they do, that's great. But I think they show up because you show up for them and you provide them, you know, the entertainment and the information, the inspiration, all that stuff. You know, and that's all separate from any kind of brand affiliation. So it's nice to have. It's honor, you know, it's a big honor for me. Like you would have told me 10 years ago, like, hey, you're going to be working with Sony or Adorama or whoever. I would have been like, you're crazy. That's not going to happen, you know, but life is funny like that.
Right. Let's see. Carolina is asking, so I may have missed it, but how did you decide on the content that you wanted to create, especially while establishing your channel? There's a few people that have similar questions, but that's pretty much the gist of it.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I decided in the beginning to create the kind of content that I felt was missing on the platform. It was, in a sense, I made content that I wanted to watch, right? So I did unboxing videos at the time for certain photography products, which again, on early YouTube wasn't so much of a thing. I did behind the scenes of different photo shoots. And then I finally got into just straight up, like, let me show you how I took these photos and doing, you know, more direct types of tutorials. And so, you know, nowadays, how I choose what to create really comes from comments on my videos, people saying, well, why did you do this? Or how did you do this? You know, I'll sit and say, okay, I'll just make a video answering that question. I'd speak at conferences and trade shows and I talk to people and they'll say, how do you do this? How do you do that? Like right now, these questions coming through the chat, I'm like, hey, I can make content about all of these things. Every single one of the questions that are in here is a piece of content that I can make. Sometimes I just get ideas, you know, like there's things where I'm like, okay, I'm going to put myself in the shoes of somebody who's just starting out. If I was just starting out, how would I do this? Right. And then just go from bare bones and just build it up to like, here's how I would do it. So I think that's really in the beginning, how you figure out what kind of content you want to make, figure out what kind of unique perspective you can bring to the table, especially if it's something that's missing on the platform, which it's always going to be something, because if you're not on the platform, then it's missing you. Right. So, you know, your unique flavor, your unique outlook and perspective is what is needed on the platform. So, yeah, just got to get out there and do it.
Get out there and make it happen. And that kind of goes a little bit into what Gio was asking. It was like, how do you recommend getting started with content creation on YouTube if you don't even have a following? And somebody else touched on that somewhere as well.
Yeah. So I'm gonna tell you something. Everybody that starts off on YouTube starts off with 0 subscribers, right? We all start off the same way, right? Some of us might feel like we have a better way to pour gasoline on that and get a bunch of subscribers. But, you know, if you're just getting started on YouTube, the biggest thing is just to get started. You know, it's just like anything else in life. Like Andre works out, right? You could tell, dude is buff. How did you get started? One day you decided, you know what? I'm not happy with the way things are. I think I could do better. So you go to the gym and you do something. And then you say, okay, when am I going to do the next something? Tomorrow, 2 days from now. You go to the gym, you do another something, and you keep doing it over a period of time. And you start to realize that over a period of time, like, hey, I'm getting better at doing these things, right? I'm getting better at the whole process. And so, you know, I think in the beginning, it's one of those things where, like, I would recommend map out like 10 to 20 different topics and record those videos and then start to put them out like a week at a time. And you'll start to get feedback from people. And then it becomes one of these things where you have so many ideas for content. And then it just becomes a matter of like, okay, now how do I get the resources to make all these videos? Because I don't have time to do all of that, right? So then you end up with other problems. But honestly, in the beginning, you just got to do it. You just got to get out there. You got to start doing it. Just like it is with going to the gym and working out. You know, it's not, oh, what kind of workout do I do? Don't worry about that. Show up, walk through the doors, lift some weights, and figure it out as you go. And you're going to see that very quickly you'll start to figure it out.
Yeah, and like, you know, so Sheena, she was touching on like, should you start posting on Instagram and Facebook first, or should you just rip off the Band-Aid? But I think basically the gist of that is just rip off the Band-Aid and make it happen.
Yeah, definitely getting people off other platforms is not, you know, you have to think about this. It's like if somebody goes to a steakhouse, right, and they go to eat there, would it be a good idea for McDonald's to go in there and start advertising, hey, we got burgers, come over here, right? Or maybe they have they got burgers at a steakhouse and they got burgers at McDonald's. Like, it's not going to work. You know, the best thing you could do is to just focus on YouTube. And the thing about it is YouTube, honestly, out of all the platforms that are available today for creators and for photographers, it is the most lucrative platform that you could possibly be on. Lucrative from a financial perspective, from a branding perspective. It crushes TikTok, it crushes Instagram, it crushes Facebook. So to spend time on these other platforms, you know, sure, do it. You should always build up every platform, but I'm putting all my money in my my YouTube, you know, my chips on YouTube.
All right. So I have a question here that got texted in. It's basically the gist of it is about like how to approach doing collaborations with people who have larger followings if you don't have a following yourself.
Yeah. I've done a lot of collaborations with big YouTubers. And every single collaboration that's ever happened because I was friends with these people, right? So early on, when I was at like 6,000 or 7,000 subscribers, I did a collaboration with Tony and Chelsea Northrup. They had a huge channel at the time. They still have a huge channel. And that came on the back of me being friends with them, right? I met them at various Sony product releases, and they were super cool, super friendly, and just made friends. And so when the time came, I was like, hey, I've got a really cool idea for a collab. And you can still see that collab on my channel from many years ago. We've done a few collabs, actually. I did one with Jessica Cabesi. She's got a huge YouTube channel. We did collabs because we were friends first. Right. And it became one of these things where it's like, hey, I have an idea for a video. Would you want to be in it? And, you know, it wasn't that I was trying to leverage any of these people's channels. It was that truly, like, they're friends of mine. And it just so happens they have big channels and they were right for the type of collaboration that we were doing. So we just rolled with it. So I would say focus more on just being a part of the community and finding the people that you vibe with. And then if you could collab with them at some point, that's great. But I wouldn't rest. I'm a very proud person. Like, I wouldn't want someone to say, oh, Miguel's channel blew up because I blew him up, because we did a collab. And, you know, because of our collab, Miguel got 100,000 subscribers. Like, I'm very proud. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, I've been almost anti-collab for a long time, just because I don't ever want somebody to say, like, Miguel was successful because I collaborated with him. Like, if I feel like somebody would say that, we would never collab. But yeah, that's the way I would.
But then the flip side of that is like I was laughing with Sal last week. We were talking about the whole bot thing. Like, if your channel blows up, people are like, they bought bots. So no matter what, you know, people who are gonna have something to say are just gonna have something to say, you know.
Hey, and listen, Sal and I have had many conversations. You know, Sal and I, you know, on the YouTube side of things, we've had conversations about YouTube. Now he's finally out doing it and he's killing it. I could tell you 100%, the dude is not buying bots. Like, I'll put my life on that. He's not buying bots. So that is not what it is. Dude is working hard. He's the type of person that like, you know, when he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it.
1,000%.
That's all I can say. Like when he said he's going to do it, I'm like, dude, man, slow down. Like you making us look bad. Like that's
Right.
just how he does things, you know, and that's why we love him.
Yeah, man, that dude is crazy. That's my buddy. What is it? Cameron had a really good one and said, "Is there a difference between being a content creator and an influencer?" That's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, there's such a negative connotation around the word influencer that I think people just try to run away from that. But, you know, the reality is that every single one of us is an influencer at some level, right? Like I have 2 kids. I am an influencer, right? I influence what they eat. I influence what they can watch and can't watch. I influence what they wear, where they go, like the activities that they take part in. They influence me, right? When I want to sleep in on a weekend and they wake me up, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so influencing is not necessarily inherently a bad thing. I think where people kind of mess up with this whole, like the difference between the two, to me, influencing is like, it's like a mental thing, like an ego thing, you know, like you feel like your opinion is worth more than other people's opinions. And so a lot of people see that and they're just like, man, I don't want anything to do with that, you know? So being a content creator is being an influencer. And I think if you're an influencer, that you're probably putting out some kind of content to be able to, you know, generate that influence. But I think what's really more important is like, what are you influencing? Are you influencing something positively? Are you doing it negatively? I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. And it's probably one of those things that we could talk about for an hour. But I don't think there is a difference between creating content and influencing, because by me sharing my opinion, like I was at the grocery store the other day and I was standing in the cereal aisle, and I was like towards the far end of the cereal aisle where, like, you know, you have the more unique cereals. And somebody was like, oh, you know, because I was standing in front of this one specific box and they're like, oh, have you had that one before? I was like, yeah, I've had it before. I was thinking about buying it. I'm just trying to figure out, like, can I eat the big box before, you know, it's going to expire? And I'm like, oh, okay. And they just grabbed the box and they walked away. And I'm like, I just influenced a cereal purchase. You know what I mean? Like, so we're doing this all the time. Like, I don't know if that's where the question's coming from, but I'm just going to say that for those people who are out there who are, you know, they feel like, oh, being an influencer is this like negative thing. It's not a negative thing if you approach it the right way and you understand the weight and the responsibility that comes with being an influencer.
For sure. Alexis is asking, basically, what's in your bag / toolkit for both content creation and for your portraits, like lighting, lenses, etc. And in that, Eric is also asking, what's your favorite lens?
Yeah. So I have a lot of gear, as you could tell from the wall behind me. You know, over the course of time, as you do like jobs and stuff for sponsors and you know, jobs for clients, like I'm always buying kits that are like, you know, like I have a kit for creating content when I'm here locally. I have a kit for when I go travel, you know, because my needs are different when I'm traveling versus when I could load up a car with a bunch of stuff. But I would say for portrait stuff here at my studio, main camera Sony Alpha 7R5. Main lens is more than likely the 70-200 f2.8 G Master version 2 or the 85 1.8. Lighting these days, I mean, it's a mixed bag. I use I have a Profoto D2. I have a Westcott FJ400. I use a lot of Nanlite stuff. Like right now, the light that's lighting me right now and lighting the background, it's all Nanlite. I've been doing a lot more with continuous lighting. And for continuous lights, Nanlite and Rotolite basically are the two that I use the most. So Yeah, I mean that's the majority of what I use. But you know, again, if you came to my studio, it's yeah. Over the course of the years that I've worked, every job that I do, I put aside like a pretty good percentage to basically just go and buy whatever it is that I need to buy, whether it be for that job or maybe I have a job coming up. I just buy everything that I need so that when the time comes, I don't want to have to borrow stuff, you know. And as long as you buy it the right way and you take care of your stuff, like you could always sell it and it will ultimately amount to being a rental, you know.
True that.
So
Yeah.
that's the way I look at it.
And you have the convenience of having it like on demand. Like I am a huge proponent
Yep.
for I buy gear out of convenience. I have a ridiculous amount of nan lights, right? But I'm also sponsored by Nan Light. And then all of my on this side, cameras flip, all my
Yep.
Westcott, lighting and stuff like that for weddings and for studio and things of that nature, right? But I want the tool that's the best tool for whatever that set of circumstances I'm in at that time. I don't want to have to MacGyver it. You know, if you guys saw me on the Creator Series, coming up with some shit in 10 minutes is not my thing, right? I need to think
Yep.
through the process, right? In order to be able to get there. But and I know everybody doesn't necessarily have the budget for that, but for me, I will spend the money for the convenience any day of the week.
Yep. If you could do it, do it. And if not, you make do with what you can until you can do it.
Right. Vince is asking, how do you stay creative on YouTube? Which is that's a good one. You know, refreshing content without oversaturating on particular topics and so on and so forth.
I think it's all about having a unique perspective. Um, you know, I never think about oversaturation on the platform because the reality is that the platform is massive. YouTube is massive. There are hours and hours and hours of content being uploaded right now as we speak on this webinar. And so I don't really think about oversaturating. I think to myself, okay, what perspective can I lend to this topic? And if I can lend a unique perspective, it doesn't matter if like, you know, 500 people made a video about this lens. Like what matters is, did they make videos that express opinions like mine? You know, and
Right.
I've always been the kind of person, like I have very unique outlooks on things. And so that's how I approach the content that I make. Even though I consume a lot of content on the platform, I think differently than a lot of people about a lot of different things. And so because of that, that allows me to be able to approach YouTube from a very unique perspective because nobody feels the way I feel. They don't have the experiences that I have. And I take all of those things and I pour it into whatever that piece of content is that I'm making. And it usually works out pretty well. So staying creative, you come up with your topics and then you figure out, how can I make this unique to myself? You know, I think a lot of people make the mistake, especially in the beginning, they try to be like their heroes whenever they make content, and that's not the way to do it. You don't want to be a watered down version of some other person. You want to be the best, most unique version of yourself and present content in that way.
Yeah. I I agree. I used to tell people all the time, "Oh, you don't want to learn from me as a photographer." But then as I started to, kind of teach, I gave the perspective of people like, "Oh, well, what about this? What about this?" I'm like, I don't care nothing about that. And I think it's a
Nope.
fresh perspective because coming up watching YouTube, I literally learned photography laying in the bed watching YouTube videos, right?
Yep.
Like,
Same.
not even out there shooting, like just laying in the bed watching YouTube videos, and then you see stuff, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm gonna buy the piece of gear that I need specifically, for that to make my life easier or whatever. And you just kind of
Right.
like figure out these things. And then once you share that perspective with people, sometimes people are thinking the same thing that you're thinking, but they feel crazy for thinking that way or whatever. And then now you've given them reassurance and that confidence that they need to go out to do whatever it is that they were thinking about doing anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's kind of funny. Like in many ways, like I don't really think about influencing people, right? Like I think about just sharing my opinions and my experiences, and if that's of value to somebody, great. If that can help somebody, great. But a lot of the content that I create, it's like people think like, oh, like I'm trying to influence opinions and stuff like that. I'm not trying to influence anything. Like if you vibe with me and you feel like what I'm saying strikes a chord, like by all means, then it is what it is. But the heart of what I do is just to just express myself, and if that happens to be something people want to ride with, great. Let's go. But yeah, I think in terms of staying creative, like I say, it's just a matter of just getting out there and doing it. Creativity is a muscle, and muscles don't get bigger by being stagnant. You got to push them, you got to stretch them, you got to work, and so that's how you do it.
True that. Yeah, I my first year in photography, I ended up meeting a dude who I thought was like this phenomenal photographer. I ended up running into him at an event, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I know you. I know your work. I like your work." I was like, "You like my work?"
What?
So he's, "Oh man, if you ever want a second shoot, let me know." And I remember he called me. That same night at that event. He asked me about a date, and he was like, "Are you available?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I wasn't available. I canceled the shit that I had so
Yeah.
that I could go with
I'm
him.
available now.
Right. But then just being around him, picking up on the things that he's doing, because I can see what's going on and I can
Yep.
see what he's coming up with. So now I'm just I'm just soaking it in. So many people like on the wedding side, like, oh, I want a second shoot. I want a second shoot. A lot of people aren't equipped to be second shooters, right? I had
Nope.
somebody with me yesterday that awful, awful, awful at this wedding. Well, not yesterday, day before yesterday, right? And but I knew that going in. I knew that, but I knew that I had every intent to shoot everything, right? But like trying to train this person to like, be with us, work within our system or whatever. But you have those people that just don't want to be told this is wrong, this is why
Yep.
it's wrong. It's like there's that excuse. Like, so if you can't take the information that's being given to you to be able to help you adjust, it doesn't matter who you're learning from or what type of environment that you're learning it in, you're just not gonna get it.
It's
um
true. Got to have
and
that right motivation.
got to have that right motivation, which takes me into Derek's question. He's asking if either of us had any teaching background originally.
Uh, so right before I got into photography, I was working at Sprint, and at that time I was a trainer for a period of time. So I did teach retention. I worked for the retention department. So I did teach back then. But prior to that, no, not really. I was in sales and doing other things. And while you answer this question, I'm gonna answer the door because somebody is here. So hang
All
tight.
right, cool. At least for me, I I did not have any teaching background. And hell, I don't even even now, sometimes before getting on stage or like teaching something, my nerves get to going because I'm a person like I don't like to be seen. I don't like to be the center of attention. And teaching kind of puts me in that place. I mean, I've had times before I've gotten on stage where I'm like, man, I'm nervous. I hope my computer crashes so I don't have to do this shit. You know what I'm saying? Like even to this day, like once I'm
Yep.
in conference season, I'm good to go. But at that beginning of conference season, when I haven't done it for 6, 8 months or something like that, I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. But once I get on
Yeah.
stage, if you're in the audience and you're that front row, I'm making fun of you so I can make my day go a whole lot smoother.
Hey, I always tell people like there's a lot that goes into this as far as like teaching photography, and there's a lot that goes into it to be good. And I'm not going to say that I'm good, but I practice a lot. I would recommend, if anybody wants to get into it, check out Toastmasters.org, find their local Toastmasters group, and, you know, get used to public speaking, because it's a lot harder than what some people make it look. You know, it's very, very difficult to get in front of a group of people and talk about stuff, even if it's something you like and it's something you're passionate about. It is very difficult, you know, even to do this, to get in front of a camera and, you know, talk in front of a virtual audience. Like, it's hard. And if you could practice and find a way to be able to practice that, it's very valuable. So Toastmasters.org. When I started getting into training and talking in front of classrooms and teaching, that was the most valuable learning that I ever did my entire life, was learning at Toastmasters.
Yeah.
What about this question from Jay Banks here?
Which side are you on? On the starred side?
On the starred, yeah.
Yeah, you can go ahead with that one.
Yeah, so Jay Banks says, I could sell salt to a snail, but I hate negotiating. What tips do you give on negotiating to people who suffer from social anxiety? First and foremost, get over the social anxiety. You know, I grew up as an introvert, so social anxiety to me is a very, like, understandable and a very real thing. I struggle with that even to this day. You got to work on that first. And you really, to me, this is going to sound stupid, but it's honest to God truth. When it comes to social anxiety, you have to stop caring about what people think and what people are going to say. Had I known that, I would have approached life totally differently from day one. But I think people are too worried about how other people perceive who they are and what they say, how they look, whatever it might be. And so from that moment forward, you cannot do anything. Like, your legs are cut off. Like, you can't do anything. So how are you going to negotiate? If you have social anxiety, get rid of the social anxiety first, and then we could talk about how to negotiate, because the two are at, like, odds with one another, right? You cannot get good at negotiating if you're not cool with talking to people, because that is how negotiations happen. You have to be confident in yourself, your abilities, your product, your service. And you have to be confident enough to be able to talk to people and share those opinions. So work on that first. And the negotiating side of things is very, very simple.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, hell, even now, after almost 5 years of speaking at conferences, I'm still like, oh my God, I hope my computer crashes. So I mean, I go through it as well. So, and you know, because I'm one of those people, like, I don't like to be seen, man. Like, working in the music industry for years, I was always very much so behind the scenes. People knew the artists.
You're not working with Diddy though, right?
Ah, that's funny. I do have some Diddy pictures on my Facebook page from, you know, his house back in the day. Right. Wow. It's so funny.
Whoa.
But yeah,
that's another life.
Right. Right. You know, it's so crazy because, you know, you just never know the different sides of people. I've worked with him for, you know, a short amount of time, like a 2-year span, right? Within that camp, never saw anything crazy, right? But you just never know who people are, man.
Oh, you never know.
You never know who people are. It is what it is. I just saw a clip of the video for the first time today when I was on the Stairmaster at the gym. I was like, that's insane. But
yeah, dude is on another level right now.
Right.
Like, another level. And you know, it's crazy because, like, you know, I'm not gonna lie, like, I'm a huge hip-hop fan, and I grew up, you know, listening to his music, and now I hear it on, like, a whole different perspective, you know, like hearing some of his songs where he would say, take that, you know, and I'm just like, I'm sitting here like, yo, I think I understand now in a way that I don't want to understand what this means, you know. It's hard to enjoy the music now.
Right, So yeah, it's crazy out here in these streets for these entertainers at the moment. But,
Yeah, you ain't lying.
you know, but yeah, we have a couple more. I don't want to keep you too much longer. I know you got people there waiting. Um, Alexis is asking, how do you keep your confidence um, throughout the content creation process starting out?
A lot of it is probably just blind faith in yourself. Um, for me, like, I don't necessarily have like, superior confidence in my thoughts or perspective. Like, I know that if I share my perspective, that there's probably at least one person in the audience who's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Or, oh wow, that light bulb just went off. I hadn't thought about it that way. So, I think it's just a matter of understanding that your opinions, your thoughts, your point of view, when you make a video, is not going to resonate with everybody, but the people that it resonates with, like, that's what you're trying to go for. That's all you got to worry about. And I get the whole thing about, like, that you feel like it'd be hard to not get swept up in other people's stuff. Like I said, for me, I've always looked at it as like, I have my own unique opinions and thoughts and perspectives. And, I don't really care what other people necessarily feel or think. Everybody is biased in one way or another. And, I would rather be in my own biases than to be worried about somebody else's stuff. So, that's just me. I think the confidence just comes with you just being true to yourself and being authentic with yourself, and being authentic with the content that you create.
Yeah, man. And that, just having that fresh perspective. Like, I was talking, me and Ad were on a call about his class at Boca one night, and we were just kind of talking through things, and we started talking about light meters. And I was like, people ask me all the time, do I use light meters? And I'm like hell no. Nah. Like, that is, you see it. Obviously, this is not a light meter, but you see it, and you're like, that's an alien. I don't have time for that. Let me just figure it out on my own, right? Whereas you look at sound light meters, everything, boom, boom, and like, so two different perspectives. Is there a right or is there a wrong? No, just whatever ends up working for you.
That's all it is. Everybody has the way that they like to work. One of my mentors when I started in photography, he's a pretty well-known swimwear photographer, and the way he does things, when I learned photography, I watched how he did it, and I can't do what he does, and I wouldn't want to do what he does. Like, I appreciate his work, I appreciate seeing his workflow, but the way that he works and the way that he poses people, I don't want to do it that way, because it's too much work. It's a level of effort that I'm not willing to put up, so yeah, I mean, I think that you're influenced in many ways by what other people are doing, but you still are going to do things your own way, in the way that you personally feel is best.
Yeah, for sure. Because whatever's going to be native to you in terms of like that level of comfort, like,
Yep.
so many more people will be, more adaptable to available light. Because again, you could just turn that light on and then just go. And then you have some people that are like, I prefer flash. I prefer whatever is the most convenient, situation for me to be able to get the job done in that moment.
True.
Derek is asking, do you think a photographer can be successful without dealing with the selling process? In what way, Derek? I know this question was a while back when I started, but in what way, or maybe you have some perspective on that, Miguel?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, no. This whole idea that's been out for a long time about like artwork or your images speaking for itself, that's nonsense. You know what I mean? Like, that's straight up like immature nonsense. Like, no, things don't sell themselves, period. Right? Like, there's think about it like this. There's medicines out there that save people's lives that you would think, if you had a debilitating illness and someone tells you, hey, here's the medicine that would save you, You would think, oh, I'm just going to buy that and I'm going to take it and I'll heal myself. They still have salespeople that go and sell this stuff. Like they're salespeople that sell medicines that save people's lives. And it's like, why do you need a salesperson for that? Wouldn't you just say like, hey, you're sick, here's this, and we're good to go? Like, photography is very much the same way. You cannot be successful in photography if you are not comfortable with the selling process. And you know, you can't be successful, in my opinion, being somebody who's a student of the sales game. I don't think you could be successful at anything if you don't know how to sell. Like, you'll find some very small bit of success if you're able to just like show up. Like, that's a big part of it these days, is just showing up. But I think if you are truly going to be successful at anything, whether it's photography, whether it's videography, content creation, whatever the case might be, you need to be comfortable with the process of selling. Like, if you're not, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, for sure. You know, whatever that's got to be to make you feel confident in whatever it is that you're doing. Because even me, if you see me at any conferences, I say I'm not a salesperson, right? Like that
Yep.
whole direct salesy kind of thing. But I do things very indirectly to try to push my clients down a particular path that I want them to go down, so that the sales process is easier later on. Like, hopefully they've already made that decision for themselves, and then
Sure.
I can just add a little bit of information to that to kind of take it over the top. But like, you know, the people that are like, who was that earlier? Was like, I could sell ice to an Eskimo or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not that person or whatever, you
Hey,
know.
that's okay. But you know what? You're doing the same thing. And I think what it is that the idea of sales and selling yourself has this like negative connotation to it, that like people are like, oh, I don't want to do anything with sales. Like, that's not me. But you're always selling people. Like, everything you do in day-to-day life is selling people. And if you don't, you must not ever get your way. Like, when your friends go and they say, oh man, we're going to go out for lunch, where y'all want to go? You're going to be the one that's like, oh, well, wherever y'all want to go. I don't know. Like, no, you're selling. Like, if you really want to go somewhere, hey man, look, there's this spot, this Jamaican spot around the corner. They got awesome food. Y'all got to go there. You're going to die. Like, the food is really good. It's cheap. Like, that's selling. But yet we don't look at it the same way. We look at it like, oh, well, that's not really selling. That's just me telling them and pushing everybody into what I want them to do. That's selling. You know what I mean? And unfortunately with photography, you know, we're talking about saturated markets earlier. Like, photography is very saturated. Everybody now with their smartphones, they got a camera, they could take a good picture. So you have to be able to sell yourself. You have to sell your abilities. You have to sell the work that you do. How that looks, it doesn't have to look like being a used car salesperson. You know what I mean? It like, that's not what I mean. Like, if that's your opinion of what selling is, then I think you have to reframe what is truly the art of selling. And when you could do that, I think that you could literally go into anything. Like, I've talked about this in my workshops. Never really said this on YouTube before, but over the course of my working career, I have sold almost everything except for people and drugs. But the reality is that with the skills that I've learned over the course of my career, if I decided to do that, I could do pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be all right. If I had to sell people and drugs, I think I would be okay. But I'm not going to apply myself in that way.
Miguel, I could be a D-boy if I wanted to, but I'm using my powers for good, not for evil.
Listen, man, the skills, they translate into whatever it is that you want to do. Like, I just happen to apply it towards, you know, content creation and towards photography, but you could apply it towards whatever the heck you want to do, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the way that it goes. And I appreciate that. Marvin says he'll buy drugs from me any day. So appreciate that. Good looking out.
Marvin has issues. We've established that.
Yeah, we know that already.
Before we get into our last question, Keith mentioned earlier that he liked the Spider-Man shoot that you had done a few years back. I hadn't seen it. Now I'm gonna have to go look for it, you know.
Yeah. So that was one of my favorite photo shoots. I'm gonna put this in the chat. So super funny thing. So this guy who had been wanting to work with me comes in from New York. We were supposed to do this like fashion photo shoot at my studio, and he comes over and he's like, oh, yeah, I got this Spider-Man outfit, and I'm like, oh, that's, you know, that's cool. You know, I'm thinking like a Spider-Man outfit from like you know, like the Party City, you know what I mean, like a cheap, you know, Halloween costume or whatever. And so he goes and he's like, no, let's, you know, I'll put it on, you can take a look or whatever. So he goes in the bathroom, he comes out, and he legitimately looked like freaking Spider-Man, like right there in front of me. Like the suit was like movie quality. And so I asked him, and he's like, yeah, dude, this suit was like several $1,000s. You know, they custom made it for his physique. So like, dude looked like Miles Morales, looked like Spider-Man. So I was like, shoot, we're doing this today. Like, this is what we're doing. We're shooting Spider-Man. We're making this video. And yeah, it was one of my favorite photo shoots that I've ever done, just because like he that suit that he had was amazing. And then we had you'll see in the video, we had this like very silly idea for the intro where, you know, he would walk up to the camera and I would be talking. So it looked like it's me in the Spider-Man outfit, and then he takes off his mask and it's him. You know, it's a gag. So if you see the video, you'll see what I'm talking about. But the photos that came from it to this day are still like some of my favorite photos that I've ever done. And I think when it comes to content creation, if I could do just that every single day, I would die a happy man. Like, that's the kind of content that I want to make from here on out. But unfortunately, it's not the easiest thing to do. So
yeah, I'm gonna have to snag that and check that out. Let's see. And then our last question comes from Eric. What ways or methods do you use to bring followers to your YouTube channel from the beginning?
well, so I talked to a very prominent person in YouTube in the sphere, Sal Sincata, and he was telling me about this thing. It's called bots. And, you know, that's the easiest way to get more followers, get more subscribers. You know, you pay about $10 or $20. They'll send you a few thousand bots. Yeah, so that's no. So the best way for you to be able to go out there is, again, to just show up and put yourself out there. You know, you create the content, you put yourself out there. Hopefully it's, again, entertaining somebody, informing somebody. The biggest thing that I could tell you is understand who you're making content for. What does that person look like? Like, where do they live? What's their economic situation? You know, if you could put yourself into the shoes of the viewer as you're creating your content, you'll understand, okay, this is how I cater my content to this type of person. And then from there, you're going to start to see that there's a lot of people that will fit that, what I call a viewer avatar. There's a lot of people that are going to fit that mold. And all of a sudden, they all start coming out of the woodworks and they follow your stuff and they support you. And then they have questions for new content and things like that. So yeah, that's the easiest way to be able to bring more followers. There's to answer that on the backside of it as well, YouTube will find more followers for your content. So if you're making good content, YouTube takes that content, and this is the way that YouTube works. You make a video, they'll put it out to a group. Let's say it's a group of 50 people. They'll put it in front of them. They'll say, okay, out of those 50 people, 10 people clicked on it. If 10 people out of 50 click, you're doing pretty good. Then they'll say, okay, did they watch the whole video? If not, how much of the video did they watch? If they watch most of the video, great. We're going to take that video now and we're going to serve it to another 100 people. And then another 1,000 people, and another 10,000 people, and then another 1,000,000 people, right? YouTube will always try to find an audience for your videos. So I've had videos of mine that, like, the first 30 days just bombed. They didn't do anything. You'd get like 100 views. And all of a sudden I come back to it like 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, and all of a sudden it's got 1,000 views, and then it's got 10,000 views, and then it's got 100,000 views. And it's a video that when it came out didn't do that well. Like, if you look, anybody who follows MKBHD on YouTube, it's one of the biggest tech content creators. he had a video that he made reviewing this HP remote control for one of his laptops or something like that. When he put out that video, and dude looked like a little kid. When he put out that video, probably like 15, 16, 17 years ago, he didn't have that many views. But now, because he's a super interesting figure in the space, people are going back to that old video, and he's got millions of views on that video. So, you know, YouTube is a funny thing. So really, that's the biggest thing. Create the content. Don't worry about where the followers are going to come from in the beginning. Worry about just jumping on that treadmill and just creating the content. And the followers, YouTube will find people that resonate with your type of content. They will serve them the videos. And if your video is on point, your information is on point, you're interesting, you're funny, you're informative, whatever it is that you do, people hopefully will follow your stuff.
That's what's up. Now, this will be the last question because nobody asked it, and I think that it's I think from people who are in the space, trying to be in the space, we always wonder, how important is that thumbnail?
Well, before somebody can ever click on your video, they're going to see the title and they're going to see the thumbnail. Those two things are the most important pieces because, you know, it's kind of like, think about it like this. Like the thumbnail is like, if you build a house, the house has to have some kind of curb appeal, right? If the house doesn't have curb appeal, it could be the dopest house on the inside with like swimming pools and slides and big screen TVs. But, you know, if the curb appeal isn't there, they're not going in that house. They will never experience it. Right. But then on the back end of that, if it has great curb appeal, then the inside also has to deliver. Right. It needs to be just as good, if not better, than what they saw from the curb. So, you know, as far as the thumbnail, it's very much the same way. The thumbnail is the curb appeal. You know, if your thumbnail is on point and your title is on point, and then you deliver with whatever that content is that it closely relates to that content, then game on. People are watching that video and you look like a hero, you know? So it's a very, very important thing. I didn't really pay too much attention in the beginning because to me, it was all about making the content the best that it could be. But I have some, in my opinion, very good pieces of content that unfortunately I didn't think about the thumbnail until like way later. And I'm like, oh shoot, this is a great topic, but like, how do I make a thumbnail and a title that would drag people into this video, you know? And so, yeah, those things you need to think about before you make the content, or else it's going to be dead in the water.
Right. Yeah, see, like this conversation could go on and on, which is why you guys need to sign up, come to the Boca Photo Summit, see Miguel in person, ask all the questions that you want to ask so that you too can be super mega star content creator on YouTube with 300,000 followers, right? Because I'm going to be sure that during this class, I schedule nothing else for myself. So I'm there, front row and center, trying to get all the information because, hey, I'm here. I'm in the space that I typically record in as well. And, you know, I've been slacking on doing my own content. Like this is information that I myself, you know, want to know so I can take that and extrapolate it and, you know, be YouTube megastar doing brand deals every week too, right? So
That's
if you
the goal.
guys are right. So if you guys haven't signed up, remember you can use code Miguel to get $100 off of the registration. Doesn't matter which one you sign up for. I think we're pretty close to being sold out of the VIP. So we only have limited spots for the VIP, which, you know, not only gets the replays of like the lectures and stuff, but also you get first dibs on signing up for the actual classes. So you snooze, you lose, right? But thank you, Miguel, for coming on and joining us today. I appreciate it. Thank you for everybody for, you know, coming in and hanging out with us. And, you know, again, check out Miguel's YouTube channel and subscribe. Let me pull that back up really quick. So be sure you head on over to Miguel's channel and sign up. We talked about Ab's channel is here, and Ab is actually with us for the next live next week on the either 29th or 30th or something like that. But
Let's
be
go.
sure you guys go sign up for Miguel's channel. Go sign up for the Boca Photo Summit. I hope to see you there. And again, I appreciate your time, Miguel.
I appreciate you. Excited for the summit, and thanks everyone for hanging out with us this afternoon. And listen, I've got my videographer and my model here. We're getting ready to go shoot some content after all this conversation about content creation. So make sure you go and head over to the channel and subscribe, because this video that we're working on today, we got 3 videos that we're going to do. All 3 of them are videos that you are going to want to watch. So don't miss out. Subscribe. Come to the Boca Summit. The class is going to be, I'm literally opening up my entire playbook for how I did this. And I look forward to seeing you there.
All right, guys. Have a good one. Later.
Take care.